the 8th day of Christmas, namely 90s gave to me. 8 Urkels geeking, 7 twins waiting, 6 sliders sliding, 5 fruit cakes, 4 time loops, 3 young kids, 2 prophetic dreams, and a refrigerator day bonus.
Welcome to Namely 90s. The podcast that takes you back to the time before smartphones, Google, and Y2K. Join your hosts as they relive the pop culture that shaped a generation and the parts that many people wish they could forget. Listen in to the conversation about how the decade defined those who spent their childhood there and how it shaped them as adults. So, turn down the grunge and dial up the internet. Let's get started. It's time for Namely 90s.
That's right. You're listening to Namely 90s. My name's Andrew. Over there is Brandon.
That's me.
As usual, you can find us online at namely90s.com or on Twitter and Instagram at namely90s with a 90s.
Computer, turn on recording.
You can also find this show on YouTube at namely90s.com/YouTube. And finally, if you'd like to support the show, head on over to patreon.com/namely90s, also with a 90s, to sign up for one of our support levels. We'd sure appreciate it. Well, here we are again.
Yes.
The 8th day of
Day 8.
our 12 days of Christmas specials annual special of specials.
Especially special.
They're the specialist. And as usual, we welcome another fantastic guest, which I will let whom I will let Brandon introduce.
Still weird that we tossed off of me.
I think it's because you know them and I don't know who they are. No offense. Brandon does all the booking, so.
Yes, I double as producer. So welcome. We have a very special 90s friend guest today.
Yes.
We have Shaleena from Everything 90s.
Hello.
Welcome.
Everyone.
Welcome.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Your tagline is Everything 90s, nostalgic trips down memory lane.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about your 90s podcast?
Sure. So, hi everyone. I'm Shaleena, the creator of Everything 90s podcast. I created the podcast almost a year ago. And the purpose was to unite and connect with fellow 90s kids or people that grew up in the 90s, our lovers of the decade. And every episode that I put out has to do with like a 90s movie or music, games, stuff like that. And I just released my 35th episode where I talk about Sister Act 1 and 2.
That's awesome.
Yeah, very cool.
Number 2 is Back in the Habit, if I remember correctly.
That joke works for me. I don't know why it works so well, but it does.
The 90s is a time of great puns.
Yeah, true.
So is it every episode you bring on guests, like either friends or other podcasts that
Yes.
are knowledgeable, on par with you for these subjects?
Yeah, so first I started off with just inviting friends, and then along the way I made friends on IG and then invited them on. So, yeah.
So she invites people that are knowledgeable about the 90s, which means I'm not eligible to be a guest on the show because I know nothing. Somehow, despite growing up in the 90s, I remember like 4 movies and 3 TV shows that I watched.
Oh, yeah. They don't necessarily have to be like knowledgeable. Just
perfect.
Yeah. Just, if you experience the 90s, then you're qualified. You're good.
And if not, you can listen to her podcast and then maybe come back to ours with some information.
Yeah, maybe there'll be actual facts on her podcast. No, Brandon does pretty good. I don't do well.
I have to remember for the both of us. But yeah, I listened to one of your more recent episodes for about the Power Rangers.
Oh yeah, that's a popular one.
Well, so you were on the SNEScapades 200 review episode, were you not?
Yes, and you guys were too.
Yes. So I heard Link talking about it as well when you guys were talking on their episode. I just wanted to put my nerd glasses on and make a fact correction. The fourth season of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, also known as Mighty Morphin Power Rangers 2010 or reversion, didn't air on Jetix like was it Shade that was on? Said it was
Prime.
That's what it was. Lindy. Yes, yeah, it was Prime. Jetix was discontinued in 2009.
Oh dear.
I don't
even know what that is.
It actually aired on the ABC Kids programming block here in America. I just felt very.
Thank you for that segue, though, because I was going to say, obviously, we have overlapping experiences because many of the things from the 90s were sort of international, but I assume being Canadian kind of changes a little bit about the 90s because there was probably different TV and things available at different times. Do you find that to be the case?
Not really.
Really?
Because we're both in North America.
Sure.
So yeah, just different stations. Like the name of stations.
Names. Okay. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. We pretty much had the same TV shows.
Well, you had some cool stuff on us too. Yeah. Like, was it Space Cadets or Space Kids? What the one that Andrew and I talked about it like a month or two ago that had like Jules Satie from Firefly and Stargate Atlantis. She was on some kids show where they would they brought it to Nickelodeon eventually, but it's like there's a time delay and I can't remember what it was called. I wasn't prepared to talk about this.
Okay. Well, then maybe don't. Okay. I'm just kidding.
It's gonna bug me. But it was like Space Cadets or Space Cases or I don't know.
Cyberspace? Is it cartoon?
No, it was a live action like sci-fi kid show that
obviously wildly popular considering that no one here can remember what it was.
It was so out there. It was Space Cases. Yes. 1996.
Very good. So when do your episodes come out and how often?
I usually put out 2 episodes per month.
Nice.
Yeah, October just 1 because I kind of got busy with school. So yeah.
That brings us back to that same conversation I think we've had multiple times, which is apparently bi-weekly either means twice a week or every other week, which seems kind of confusing, but we could say bi-weekly, I guess, generally.
Yeah.
I can't explain that.
So last year when we did the Christmas specials, we had on a show that focused on the 80s and 90s from the UK, and they were like, so you're about our age roughly, give or take a few years, and they were like maybe 10 years older than us, but so and they asked us why the 90s, because that was our formative years, but for them it was like their teenage years, that was their heyday.
They remember the entire 90s. We only remember like 93 through 99 because we were not old enough at the beginning.
Yeah.
What made you pick the decade to focus on?
I think just the nostalgia and just being a 90s kid. As you're saying, like my best memories are in the 90s. Is that sad?
I mean,
almost 30 years, and
there's an idealism, I think, because it's before one has to worry about any real responsibilities. But like the other thing about the 90s is they feel more distinctly like a decade. Like you say the 90s, and people have a vision in their mind of what that is. For the 2000s, I mean, I just don't think it's as strong of a. It doesn't evoke such a strong idea of what that means. It just means, like certain pop culture items, but it's not a big, it's not an era that you would look back and go, oh yeah, the 2000s.
Yeah.
It was like a definitive time. Although the show that we're watching today started in 1989, which is the year I was born. So technically bled into the 90s. And a random fact that I found is that it's of all the shows in the 90s that bled over into of the 80s that bled into the 90s, it was the longest running of all of them. But we're talking about Family Matters today, specifically the episode season 4, episode 10 or 12. It's beginning to look a lot like Urkel. But what's everyone's memories of Family Matters? Toss it to our guest first.
Oh, okay. So I actually don't have a lot of memories about Family Matters. I didn't watch it a lot as a kid. It's funny because I did an episode on Family Matters, but I had my friend who was a huge fan of the show come on and like fill in the gaps for me.
He was very passionate about Family Matters.
That's a little problematic. I don't know.
He was pointing out the kind of problems in the Steve Laura relationship. Great episode.
More to come on that.
Yeah, if you're listening to this for the Family Matters, you should check out the Everything 90s episode of Family Matters, which was a part of your kind of mini focus on Black 90s sitcoms that you did earlier this year.
Yes. Yeah. So, I didn't have much. Before that episode, my memory of the show was very kind of non-existent. Like I know Urkel, like the classic Urkel, the Urkel dance, the doll. And then after that episode, I went and bought season 2 and started watching it currently. And I love it.
It's one of the, for me, it was the original show on TGIF, which is the ABC programming block that it aired on. That was this was what you watch on Friday night if you were a family. It was the 8 p.m. slot. And it's I remember that. I want to say Full House was somewhere in there. I don't know if it was on at the same time or same TGIF block, but I remember Family Matters. I remember Step by Step. I remember anything that had that same intro where everyone turns to the camera and you have the cheesy song, but that sounds the same across
every sitcom of that era.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Is this a Step by Step song or is it?
As an aside, if TGI Fridays existed back then, why would they not have sponsored TGIF? Yeah. Just saying.
Or even vice versa.
But I mean, we watched it every week, I guess, because we did watch TGIF on ABC. And I don't know, the show itself, I remember it, but the theme song is very nostalgic. I remember that as if it were yesterday. Weirdly enough.
Yeah.
Days go by.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Days go by. Yeah.
I felt like no time had passed when I started watching it. I was like, wow, this
it did bring
it's
me back.
very familiar,
Yeah. Also, if you were a cartoon fan in the 90s of not Nicktoons, but the off-brand stuff that you could find on USA, Julia White who played Steve Urkel, was the voice of Sonic in the cartoons in the 90s.
Oh, snap.
Yeah.
Did not know that.
There's 2 cartoons that aired at the same time. His is the good one. So
this is an important question. Is the channel USA in Canada?
No,
I want to say no.
No,
just a guess.
We don't have Nickelodeon either. We have YTV.
Oh, right.
Which shows Nickelodeon shows on it, plus our own Canadian shows. But if you had or have satellite, you could get the American channels, Disney Channel and Nickelodeon.
Yes, that's one of my favorite rants to go on. The company DirecTV, it's literally indirect TV because they take the TV and they send it to DirecTV and then they beam it off a satellite to your house. How could that be any less direct? I'm just saying.
To be fair, they don't have 2 T's. It's just either DirecTV or
Direct. From now on, I'm calling it Direct V. From now until forever.
Which is my satellite provider. So for those of you that don't know, listening out there, Family Matters is an American television sitcom that originated on ABC from September of 89 to May of 1997 before hopping one final year to CBS for their, they stole all the TGIF shows that ABC didn't want anymore.
CBS, which stands for Can't Be Serious.
It's the channel the old people watch. And Andrew for some reason.
NCIS season 19 with the guy from Office Space.
And it is a spin-off of Perfect Strangers, which I never knew as a kid. I just figured it was a spin-off from Die Hard.
Yeah. I mean, it's got, oh gosh, his name escapes me every time. It's got the guy from Die Hard and he was a cop.
Carl?
Yeah,
Carl Winslow's the actor's real name. You knew it on your podcast.
Reginald
Val Johnson, right?
Reginald Val Johnson. Yep.
Yeah, he was a cop in Die Hard. So even though it was a different city, I feel like.
Oh yes. So
he got transferred.
Family Matters takes place in Chicago, Illinois. It revolves around the Winslow family, whereas Die Hard was in LA. I didn't know that as a kid. And midway through the first season, Steve Urkel's introduced as their next door neighbor, and he became such a fan hit that he eventually took over the show. Yeah, which kind of sucked because they were building an ensemble cast. If you look at it, they had the main Winslow family, and then I think Carl's mom moved in with them, and there's
an aunt.
Yes, the aunt with her annoying son that the young kid in every sitcom that has to be I get a one-liner every episode.
Oh boy.
What was his name?
Richie.
Anyway.
Wasn't it
Richie? Yes. Okay. Did he make an appearance in this episode? I don't remember.
I don't remember that. No.
He did.
He did. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I guess the whole family was singing around the tree at the end, but in the beginning, oh yes, because in the beginning he says he calls Steve Uncle Steve for some reason.
Oh, that's right.
Which raised a lot of questions.
I could explain that.
Oh, really? Please do. I was confused.
It's common, I can't make a blanket statement of all Black families, but in a lot of Black families, especially Caribbean, the kids call older people aunt or uncle, even if they're not their aunt or uncle, bloodline. So it's a sign of respect. Gotcha.
Because that's same in Polynesian Pacific Islander culture too.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I've actually seen it in other areas. When my family that grew up on a farm, the guy that owned the farm or worked with their dad became uncle, even though there was no relation. It's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My mom's best friend who lives in Hawaii is both my auntie and my aunt. Well, not actual aunt, but yeah. But okay, I was assuming it was something like that, but it's good to have confirmation. Because I was is Steve somehow related to this family and then hitting on Laura for 9 seasons? Any other broad remembrances of Family Matters or experiences with Family Matters before we jump into the episode?
I think it was a wholesome family show from the 90s. I mean, what can you say really bad that's bad about it? Well, some things. We'll get into that later.
We'll get into it.
But for its time, it was a pretty wholesome show.
It was definitely. I mean, we were all when I was a kid when I watched it, so it felt good. It was a feel good show.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The nerd becomes the hero at some point. Which is unfortunate. That it's beginning to look a lot like Urkel. This is the season 4 Christmas episode, where so my first note is Urkel really has stolen the show at this point.
It's true.
I think the opener is the Winslow family's decking a tree, and Steve barges in with something he calls a turbo flocker, which is it looked like a snow blower that blew, or a leaf blower that blew fake snow onto a tree. Of course, his shenanigans leads to the entire room and everyone being covered in fake snow.
Well, during the whole lead up to that, I was like, even if you weren't familiar with Family Matters, you knew where it was going. And it was like, here, like later on, I have to talk about this now just because it's part of the same thing. Later on, she brings like this intricate, elaborate, like ginormous gingerbread house out. And I'm like, I wonder where this is going.
Yeah.
And even if you didn't watch the show, you would still think that, I feel like.
It took me 2 days to build this monolith.
It's like ornate, you know? It's got like
and of course he did the classic, "Did I do that?" line. I used to love saying that when I was a kid. Much to the chagrin of my parents, I assume. So then that was the teaser. It goes into the intro, which we talked about. I love those classic 90s themes.
Yeah, anytime they're like doing something and their name pops up at the bottom and they like look at the camera, that's always the best for sitcoms. Yes. For other things, it's dumb. Like action movies, no.
There's like a TikTok trend, or was a TikTok trend of the Full House theme song, and then people would make videos like with their name popping up and then looking into the
That's screen. Awesome.
I would have jumped on that had I been on TikTok. Who doesn't just love like a video where people are just constantly turning to the camera with their smiling with their name showing up under it.
But the best is when someone's like writing on a clipboard and they look up, you know, that's one of my favorites.
I like to like studying a photo or a painting and then they notice the camera's there and then gives like a head nod and a smile.
I feel like some of them had like a guy, like for some reason there was some sort of box there and he like put his foot up on it and like put his elbow on his knee or his arm on his knee. And like, I feel like that happened.
Does the thinker. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's see. We talked about the next scene already where
I have a question.
Yes.
I can't remember when Steve Urkel comes on screen. Is there always like a real big reaction from the studio audience?
Yeah.
He's like,
I feel like that becomes obnoxious after a while. Like it's kind of cool when it's a really big celebrity that comes on, like suddenly they walk on the stage at SNL and they get like a big thing. But when it's the same person every episode and that happens, that's a little bit ridiculous.
Well, they clearly put the applause sign on for his first entrance every time.
Was it a real I assume it was an actual studio audience.
I think so.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah. This
is an important question that's very related. Does anyone know if The Big Bang Theory has an actual live studio audience or is that just a laugh track?
I feel like shows nowadays are a fake audience. I don't think they're real.
Someone was making a point about how like if you take away the laugh track from a lot of shows, they become unfunny. And someone explained that the reason is because they do time the show to allow the laughter to die down. So if you just take away the laughter, it'd be weird. But if you cut out like that awkward waiting period, which people have done this, they've actually taken shows, removed the laughter, and then they become stupid. But I think it's different when you actually have real people laughing at a joke versus just some track that you play. So anyway, I just thought it was an interesting take on that, but I think it adds to the show.
That's a good point that you never think about when you're just like, who needs a laugh track anymore in this day and age? But like the live audience with like the way that they can, every laugh sounds different. It's not like The Big Bang Theory where it's like, hey, it's the same fake laugh every single terrible joke. We clearly don't enjoy that show here.
Apparently there actually is a live studio audience. I don't know if I believe that.
I don't know if
whatever. Anyway, that's very 90s, isn't it? Sorry, I'll let you get back on track there.
Well, I mean, multi-camera sitcoms. That was like the bread and butter of the late 80s or the
anytime I can trash that show, 90s. I'm going to take the opportunity. I don't care what podcast I'm on.
And I fully support it.
I've never watched it. So.
Oh, Please don't.
It's one of those shows where if you put it on in the background, what happens is you can't hear the dialogue and you hear a laugh track every 4 seconds.
Wow.
What's worse is that there's 12 seasons of very unintelligible comedy, if you could even call it that. They essentially just take a Wikipedia page, turn it into an episode and the conceit of the show is that nerds are not cool, and it is okay to laugh at them for their strange and socially awkward ways for 12 seasons. And
I will say that this show we're talking about now, Family Matters, went real hard on the toxic nerd stereotype, but real hard.
True.
They did.
But at the same time, it wasn't like, it's not the Big Bang Theory. Yeah,
and it's not like nerd as much as sort of dweeb, if there's really a difference or a distinct line. I think there is, though, because, nerds are kind of cool now. They're in.
Yeah, but they weren't then. It was still like weird science, and
they just don't dress like that. That's the thing.
Steve Urkel, yeah,
it's over the top.
But Steve had a car.
I know.
Oh, I love that car. I want one.
It's so. I thought it was a
so
P50 at first, but it's actually a BMW.
Isetta.
Setta. Okay.
Isetta. Yeah. And the Peel was smaller. It had a side door on some models, a front door on the other. But yeah, it was technically different.
So, Steve Urkel drove a 1960 BMW. I didn't realize how like his car shows up in multiple episodes, including the first one where he asks Carl to teach him how to drive,
entitled "Driving Carl Crazy." 90s pun.
Can I just ask, did Steve have like a bad home life? Is that why he was always over at the Winslows?
It's a good question.
I feel like we need a gritty reboot. And it deals with like gang violence. And like, I'm just saying, it is Chicago. They're due for it. I'm just saying, everything needs a gritty reboot.
Or it's just, I just assumed his parents were working all the time. That's why he was always over at the Winslows.
That could be latchkey kid kind of thing.
And then he, it basically becomes like that guy from that Netflix series everyone likes called You. Has anyone?
Oh, I've never seen it, but I've heard of it.
Like a creepy stalker guy, because he was stalking Laura at the like he was just waiting outside the mall for her to exit. Was that not creepy to anyone else?
Yeah, it's like it's pretty toxic.
Like if we pulled out the laugh track and replaced it with like a slasher movie.
Hi, I stalked you to the shopping mall. And his car was like, I know it was just for the TV show, but his car is like 15 feet away, and then he sees her and he just turns on and pulls up. Like, this is creepy.
Also, I was reading up on the car. It goes supersonic. Like it can hit speeds above Mach 1, which I feel is dangerous if you're driving. I don't know if you've reached that episode yet on your watch through, but I'm curious to go to keep going forward and see if I can find it.
Oh boy.
But so Steve runs into Laura, who was helping, was it get toys for needy children at the mall? Or something to the extent
I recall that.
She was doing some sort of nice charity for people. And then she picked up her presents that she had on layaway. And Steve insists on taking her home because it's starting to snow, which I feel like driving a 3-wheel car of that size and weight.
In the Chicago winter, that's probably not ideal.
She would be safer just waiting for the bus. But he's being pushy. He pulls the bag and trips and falls and breaks a Christmas present for her mom, which was some sort of vase.
Crystal vase.
Vase. She's buying a crystal vase for her mom. Steve trips and the bag breaks his fall, and he breaks the vase.
His line was funny. He's like something along the lines of, the bag broke my fall and I broke the bag or something.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
The question I have, and I'm not actually able to answer this, I suppose I could just Google it, is what is the actual difference between crystal and glass? Is there a difference?
Well, crystal is glass. I think it's like a structure thing.
I see.
The molecular
structure
is crystalline.
Science.
Yes. Well, I did study to be an engineer once.
Okay, put on some high waters and suspenders and obnoxiously large glasses now.
I mean, if I had been prepared, that would have been my outfit. But no, I'm just wearing a cheesy Christmas sweater, which is a good time to remind our audio listeners that you could watch us at naming90s.com/YouTube and see all of our wonderful guests and all of my crazy Christmas sweaters.
Yes, you can watch me make no effort. Sorry.
You're wearing red.
Listen, I've wearing the sweatshirt last week. The problem with my recording
burgundy
shed being in the backyard is that I just like roll out of the house and whatever I'm wearing because it's 30 feet away.
Whereas for these Christmas episodes, I'm wearing red and green hats instead of my usual blue.
I should have done a wreath. Whatever.
Yeah, a wreath would have been a good idea. All right. Yeah, last year you had Christmas lights.
I know. The reason I didn't put them up is because we're still recording pre-holiday episodes. But I did see a graphic on the internet the other day that was funny. It was like, just so everyone's aware, and it was like all of November was highlighted and it said Christmas. And then there were 3 days around Thanksgiving that said Thanksgiving. And then all of December was highlighted as Christmas. And I think I agree with that.
Which, now that I'm thinking about it, we forgot to ask Shaleena if she had any holiday memories she wanted to share.
Oh, whoops.
Oh, sure. Well, a tradition I have, me and my sister, we watch Christmas movies on Christmas Eve. Like we stay up and watch. And then we open up one gift on the 24th.
Nice.
So we still do that to this day.
Do you have a specific Christmas movie that you like to watch?
Oh yeah, Christmas Story.
Nice.
Favorite.
Classic. You'll shoot your eye out.
Yeah.
And
any Home Alone ones.
Do you have thoughts on the new one coming to Disney Plus? Or I guess it's out at this point when our listeners are listening, but it's coming out November here.
Is that the one? They're British, right?
I think, yes, they seem British, but have an uncle that's just a U.S. guy. I assume.
A U.S. guy.
Very American accent. Pete Holmes, that's who it was.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. I'm looking forward to it. The trailer looks pretty interesting.
Usually Andrew's the one of us that's like, oh, reboots are nah, but he's on board for it.
Yeah, well, I said something really positive about it, and I was I surprised myself.
Like, I was waiting for him to just trash it because I was like it looks okay, but they've used every single line from the original and in the trailer.
I like to be unpredictable.
But yeah, I assume that it was just trying to stoke the nostalgia and it'll be its own movie. But I was just like, the mom said that in the first movie, and Kevin said that every line the kid said, it was verbatim from the first movie.
Okay,
but that's just
like it then. I don't know.
I don't know. No, I'm going to give it a chance. Just I was a little put off personally, but yeah, I've taken over the discussion to trash a movie we've not seen yet.
Perfect.
Okay, so back to the episode. Urkel broke his fall with the vase, and Laura is understandably upset at him, and then he's just like, oh, acting like an injured, like someone kicked a puppy or something.
Well, like, he didn't ask her permission to grab her shit. Like, don't grab people's shit without their permission. Sorry, I'm just saying.
Or like offer to help get it replaced, since it's like, is it Christmas Eve at that point, or like?
I don't think they make that clear.
He just smashed all of their Christmas presents.
Yeah.
He's just. I'm lost.
Yeah, it's I mean, obviously it's a plot device, but still, I feel like he should have been apologizing. I was annoyed that he didn't apologize. Honestly, like, oh, I'm glad you're okay. No. It's like, oh, I'm glad you're okay. Like, he tripped. Like, he's going to be fine unless one of the shards of crystal, like, cuts one of his major arteries.
Well, did he say sorry? I don't recall.
I don't think he said sorry.
Oh,
I don't think he said it either. He was just like, he did the joke line about that you brought up, that he's like,
he was waiting for her to say something. Like, he didn't apologize, because if he apologized, it'd be hard for her to be like a total, she wouldn't have acted like she acted. I think eventually he kind of showed some remorse, but it was just like, I would immediately be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, that this is, let me do something,
Yeah. Let's find a way to fix this.
Yeah.
This is the hero of our story. But yeah, so she eventually tells him off, like, in a way that is mean, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Super mean. So mean. Her words cut me.
Really? Okay. You didn't feel it was justified in that course.
I mean, I get you're angry, but you still don't like.
I mean, I guess they're neighbors. They've known each other a long time.
Yeah, like it's fine if you're angry, but my thing is like, don't
forgive and forget.
Don't commute. No, not forgive. Well, okay. Yeah, forgive, but like, don't communicate with someone when you're really, really angry. Just cool off a bit and then go approach them.
But the thing I do at the same time, I do agree with, and this is probably getting a little bit too deep for this show, but it's like, he's just forcing himself into their lives. And like, it's very clear that they're not super into him being around, but he's like, hey, it's me again. And obviously that gets more into like his weird obsession with Laura, which is like a little aggressive and creepy nowadays anyway. But it's like, he just like literally forces himself upon this family, and like, despite all of their objections, they can't get him to go away. That seems a little bit like, I would be pissed too. After a while, I'd be like, please leave. Like,
daily, someone comes over and like that you're not interested in, and you ask to make out with them. I feel like that's a little wrong. Just
later,
that's
like,
true. Yeah, it is.
When she was playing Urkel, I'm going to go into that a little bit. She was like, finally he said Laura, and she's like, all right, breaking him down. It's like, oh gosh, that's not ideal.
And so, I mean, this was a 90s trope, like or late 80s, early 90s sitcom trope, where there's the next door neighbor that always would just like come in and be annoying, and the parents wouldn't like them, and the Kimmy Gibbler,
there was
Steve
nary
Urkel.
a fat suit nor a homophobic joke in this episode, so I felt like that was real positive for the 90s.
Fair.
Oh my gosh, is that a common thing in this show?
No, in the 90s in general.
In the 90s,
90s comedy, a lot
sure.
of fat suits, a lot of gay jokes, unfortunately.
Yeah. Although, like, this show, they had what was Steve Urkel's alter ego when he would like?
Was it like
Stefan
Urkel or something?
Yeah, it was Stefan Urkel, I believe. He would like take a potion, and it would like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde him into being anti-nerd and very, very suave and cool.
I still think Suave Urkel would have been the way to. Was that what they called it?
Stefan Urkel.
Okay. Sorry. This has again gone down a path that was not intended.
Right. So then once Steve is brokenhearted and drives off, it becomes yet another Wonderful Life parody. This seems to be a common trope in Christmas episodes that we watch. This is the first one we've encountered this season, or this season of specials, but last year we had like 2 or 3 shows just ripping off It's a Wonderful Life, which was playing in the background, so fair enough. A guardian angel comes down and talks to Laura. His name is Tyrone P. Jackson, and he I like the line, he's like, I haven't got my wings yet, and I play the keyboard.
I laughed at that.
Yes, because she's like, where's your harp? He's like, no, I play the keyboard.
I want to say something controversial, as I always do. Brandon rolls his eyes. I believe that It's a Wonderful Life should be stricken from the record. Not because of the quality of that movie. Nothing about that. But I wish that people who made shows were unaware of that movie, so they would stop doing Christmas specials that somehow parody it. Like I think it cheapens the initial movie.
Well, it's kind of it's the Christmas gift to the writers' room because they're like, we don't have to try.
Exactly. That's like when they reach into the hat and say, add a monkey. That's the same thing. Like, okay, we're out of ideas. What next? Let's reach into the hat and it's a monkey. Okay.
That's a later 90s trope.
So
or actually, no, that's a mid 90s trope.
Nothing against the actual movie, but like, just stop doing specials or parodies. My goodness.
Come up with something original.
Exactly. Speaking of being an original, another joke that he said, we're watching ABC, which is the channel that
I didn't catch
is on, but he called it the Angel Broadcasting Channel. So, it might not translate outside of the States. So he shows Laura a version of herself where she is the Urkel and Urkel is her and her family. And to me, it was creepy to see Mr. Winslow be Steve's dad and
yeah, like, it was a little odd.
Love him as a son. Laura Urkel busts in at one point. Does the whole Steve routine.
She did a good job, acting wise.
Absolutely,
she was great.
And the voice was spot on as well.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell, like, was Laura Urkel attractive or not? Did they play down enough of her innate beauty to be nerdy Urkel? Because they do a great job with Jaleel as Steve Urkel, where you're like, he's like a nerdy, like the 90s. He's not like really. I'm not really into that. But
I'm not sure this is going. I don't know. I thought it was kind of honestly a little awkward how they had her dressed. It was like, and I don't want to get too into this, but like with the suspenders, just kind of like pushing everything together up top. And then she was doing a lot of like weird, like kind of motions. And I was like, this is kind of creeping me out.
She was doing a lot of chest thrusts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I guess Steve does, but it is a very different anatomy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I was getting a little uncomfortable, honestly.
Yeah, it was too much of it.
Yeah.
Oh, the giant gingerbread house was in the dream segment or the Laura Urkel segment. I forgot about that. I said it was earlier in the episode.
Oh, yeah.
She has the "I'm wearing you down" line.
Yeah, that's bad.
Because Steve calls her Laura instead of something about being a dog-faced person.
Yeah,
I was like, okay, that's a.
I missed that.
Oh yeah, she's like, that's where the "I'm wearing you down" line is from. She's like, oh, you called me by my name instead of some horrendous insult this time.
Oh,
it's
gosh.
Like, oof. So
I'm just thinking about the table. I like your comment. Should 3 grown men really destroy a table like that? I feel like if 3 grown men fell onto a table of that size, like it probably would break. But this was clearly one of those like stunt tables, and it just shattered into 1,000 pieces.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, it was pretty good.
So eventually, Steve tells Laura off in the same way that Laura told Steve off. And I'm left wondering, why should we feel bad for either version of Urkel? Shaleena, you seemed to empathize with the Urkels. I'm still on the mind of like you're being creepy and inserting yourself into these people's lives.
Their holiday, no less. Like
I guess
go ahead. Go ahead. No, please go ahead.
Oh no, I guess because I haven't watched a lot of like enough of it to have that perspective. So maybe that's where I'm lacking.
Well, like I had a friend I grew up next to, and like I would always just go over to their house and just hang out. Like I didn't really have to ask permission to go in, but if it was around the holidays, I was kind of like, ooh, is it okay? Do you have family over? I wasn't just like, hey guys.
Yeah.
You know?
And we get it. They're neighbors, and I would say friends, even though no one seems to like Steve at all.
Like, there's no logical reason why they would keep letting him in. Like, what if they just locked the door?
Like,
Right?
yeah. Well, I assume he had a key at some point. Like he knows where their key. He's like the nosy neighbor that knows where your hide a key is.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's consistently making inappropriate comments and advances. Yeah, and
It's too much.
so Laura learns her lesson. What lesson it is, I don't know. She should be nicer to Steve. Again, I feel like that is a strange lesson to learn. But it's the 90s. It's Christmas. You should be nice to people.
Yeah. Around the holidays, I think that's the time to be. Well, I mean, you should always be nice, but I feel like people are nicer generally, except in retail settings. Then no.
Yeah. So I'm just assuming Steve has like some sort of terrible home life. Whilst like Laura invites him over to spend Christmas Eve with them, and it's like, who
would
why
do this?
Yes, if your family is next door celebrating Christmas Eve, why would you go next door? And
Yeah.
yeah,
And it was basically like, I'm going to enable him. Oh, good.
well, they do have a talk in the kitchen about her being nicer to him, which is one of the most awkward things in the episode. I feel like, because Steve's like, "Ooh, you love me," or "You're having a nervous breakdown," and those are the two extremes. So, what is it? Did she have a nervous breakdown, or did everything happen and she loves him?
As if there's no in between. Like, I just don't want to be a dick. I mean, honestly, that's kind of where she's at.
Yeah. Also, so Andrew brought up the before we started, there was he thought the random bursting into singing around the tree was strange.
I just think
at the
as
end?
as an
come all you faithful
actor or actress, like, just having to, they're like, okay, and this is the part where you just randomly start singing with nothing to cue it whatsoever. Just start singing. And it always feels awkward to me, you know, and I can't imagine being in that, like, having to do that, you know, but I'm also not a performer in any way, shape, or form.
Well, I mean, I feel like a lot of these people are like stage actors and like had a lot of formal training for singing and stuff like that.
But it's one of those things where you imagine if you were just like, let's just say you were at Christmas Eve and like your aunt just walked in and just started busting into that song, and we'd be like, what the hell? Like, what's wrong with you?
You wouldn't join along and stand perfectly as if there was a camera watching you.
I would honestly pretend to get a phone call or text and be like, oh, leave. That's me.
Also, there was the point where the star wouldn't come on, and I was like, I swear to God, if the little nephew says every time a star lights up, an angel gets his wings, I'm going to lose my shit.
Did he actually say that?
He did not. He did not.
Thank goodness.
But I don't understand. Like, did Tyrone at some point say, when a star lights, I get my wings?
He did say that.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I missed that part because I was just like, what? Why are they focusing on the star? Isn't it a bell?
Maybe they would have gotten sued for that, or like copyright.
Yeah. The other thing that's a problem with that, whenever they have the little kid do it, is because in the movie It's a Wonderful Life, like, that's the original line.
Teacher
right?
says every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings.
But now it's like, what, like, 4-year-old has watched It's a Wonderful Life, or did they just originally come up with that on their own? It just doesn't make any sense.
Or what teacher is telling kids in the 90s that angels get wings when stars turn on?
I think that still happens at this point, as they tried to, like, oh, well, let's not go into that. Never mind. Not everyone's as liberal as we are.
And then it ends on the Christmas card ending, where it's like, "Happy Holidays" from the Family Matters team, and which we watched Dinosaurs for the first episode of this year of our Christmas specials. And they also were on ABC, and I think it was around this time. They also had the same, like, graphic with a card and
Yeah,
Merry Christmas from
yeah.
the dinosaurs crew.
Or
and
the Winslows.
Yeah. Which I thought was interesting. If we focused more on the ABC sitcoms, I wonder if we would see more of those great season's greetings cards.
Maybe, yeah.
My favorite thing about this episode
Yes.
was the duration, which was 22 minutes. Sometimes some of these really cringy holiday specials go on for way too long, and this one was digestible, you know?
It was not Beverly Hills 90210 length doing the same thing. Any final thoughts on this episode?
Now that I think of it, it does kind of feel like a ripoff of It's a Wonderful Life, like a
Absolutely.
Yeah, the way that like when Laura comes back as herself and it's like, oh, now I know how Steve feels. I'm like, do you really?
I felt it
because in the next episodes you're still mean to him.
That's a fair point. Well, like 90s sitcom rules, everything resets, right? Between episodes.
What if they just took Steve Urkel? I want to make an entire parody where I just take an episode and like blur out Steve Urkel and then just like somehow make him into the embodiment of the Big Bang Theory and just watch people be really mean to him. Because that's what I imagine. That's what I want to do to that show. Just tying it back in.
The Big Bang Theory.
Yes.
Not Family Matters.
No, Family Matters on point.
It's a classic. And so I guess that's it for this holiday edition of Namely 90s. Tune in tomorrow for another day 9, I believe, of
day 9.
Our 12 Days of Christmas specials. Thank you to Shaleena of Everything 90s for coming on. Can you let our listeners know where to find you?
Yes. So you could connect with me on Instagram at Everything 90s Podcast. The 90s is a numerical, an S. And my podcast, Everything 90s Podcast, is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor.
Anywhere great podcasts are found.
Yes, exactly.
We always go through a whole list, exhaustive list as well, just for fun.
And as always, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Namely90s with a 90S, or find our personal accounts at bschwitty and at NamelyAndrew, and tell us what you want us to talk about on future episodes. If you'd like to support the show, please check out our Patreon at patreon.com/Namely90s, also with a 90S. And finally, you can contact us through our website, Namely90s.com. Please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Did I Do That?, Deezer, TuneIn, iHeart, and wherever you get your podcasts from. I'm Brandon. That's Andrew. Thank you so much one final time to Shaleena of Everything 90s. Go check out her stuff. And we will catch you tomorrow for day 9 of our 12 Days of Christmas specials.
That was amazing. Wow.
Yes, thank you again for...
I need to hire you to do my outros, Brandon.